RotoGrinders! Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. Blenderhead, Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Friday, March 17th. It's St. Patrick's Day. Does it matter? Does it even matter? I don't even care, right? Feel free to celebrate any way you want if it matters to you. But I'll be here breaking down tomorrow's UFC 280-something. It's 286, 285, 280... something. They number that. I don't know why they still number them. Whatever. It's a UFC pay-per-view tomorrow. So we're going over. It's Fighting Friday. We're fighting. We're fighting with each other. Are we fighting with each other? I don't know. Not in the YouTube chat. Wataz, Andrew Garcia, Suki Singh. Good morning. Defik, Daniel Hutchings. Good morning. Fight on. Yes, that's right. Fight on. Hit the thumbs up button. You know how much I like the thummy thumbs. Smash the thummy thumbs. It's Fighting Friday. Remember tomorrow. It's an early slate for us here in the United States. They're in England, so it's a 1 p.m. Eastern slate. The early prelims at 1 p.m. Eastern, then 3 p.m. for the regular prelims, and then 5 p.m. Eastern. So you'll be out of there by 7:30ish Eastern. So pretty decent. I like that, right? Soccer in the morning. I got soccer, and with the time shift, right? Because I don't think UK does daylight savings time for another week or two. So it's 11 a.m. for the Premier League slate, and then 1 p.m. for the UFC cards. So there's not much time in between. So that's pretty good for me. But it's Fighting Friday, UFC 286. I think it's 286. I don't know. It's something like that. 15 fights. 15 fights. And you know what we do on this show? We don't necessarily break down the fights in and of themselves. If you want that, you listen to the Ground and Pound podcast with Mike Brown, with Liam Heslin. That's in our premium section. So subscribe to RotoGrinders Combo Premium, right? You get NBA, you get MMA, you get soccer, you get PGA, you get college basketball, right? MLB will be back, right? In less than 2 weeks. You get that also. You get all the projections. You get all the ownership. You get all the premium content. You get lineup HQ, full access, build your lineup, do whatever you want. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. But what we do here, we talk about the DFS strategy of an MMA slate and the two main contexts, the contextual variables that we need to understand on every UFC slate is the size of the slate and the spread of the fights, okay? So we're trying to figure out what is more likely or less likely what the nut lineup will look like. And it's based around those two main contextual variables. The size of the slate and the spread of the fights. Okay, so the size of the slate is 15 fights. There's a large slate. Right? Sometimes we have 10 fight cards. Sometimes we have 12, 11, sometimes it's 13, 14, 15. 15 is a lot of fights, which means there are 30 fighters to choose from, which means there's a lot more combinations available to make the nut lineup. Let me reload this a bit. So when there's a lot more fighters, there's a lot more opportunities for fighters to put up ceiling scores, to have finishes, have a lot of ground and pound and takedowns and everything like that. So your aim, I mean, it sounds kind of straightforward that you're always aiming for the highest score you could possibly get, right? But you're aiming primarily for ceiling for all of your fighters. Okay, so picking it's quite possible that Joanne Wood at 8,600 beats Luana Carolina and scores 84 points. That's probably not gonna be good enough for the nut lineup. Doesn't mean you could cash with that. Can you win a small field GPP with that? Maybe. So you're primarily aiming less on win equity and more on ceiling equity. Can this fight either score a lot of points from grappling on DraftKings, especially, or can we get early finishes? Can we get some knockouts, knockdowns, stuff like that? So that's what we're primarily aiming for. And this is the main reason why a guy like Marvin Vettori at 9,100 is going to be lower owned, right? Because at 9,100, I mean, his inside the distance line is plus 340 or something. Not much of a finisher. He has some wrestling. He'll probably be dominant on the feet even against Roman Dolidze, right? maybe not that high of a ceiling. Can it happen? Sure, of course, but it's a lower probability, right? We have fights like let's see. I mean, that like Jennifer Maya, Casey O'Neill, like Casey O'Neill could put up a ton of takedowns. She has a high ceiling, but she doesn't land enough takedowns. I don't know if there's a finish in that fight. Maybe it's a little bit lower ceiling, but I mean, obviously, Fiziev, Gagey, probably no wrestling in that fight. You're probably at 8,800 for Fiziev, Justin Gagey 7,400. You're probably going to need a knockout, right, in order to hit a ceiling. And then Rafael Fiziev, winning even in a third round knockout, maybe scores 92 points. Is that going to be good enough for 8,800 on a 10-fight card? That may be true. On a 15-fight card, probably not, because there's a lot more opportunity. The opportunity cost is much higher because there's more fighters to choose from. There's more fights. There's more opportunities for a fighter to score 100-plus points. So that's the first contextual variable of the slate, the size of the card. Okay? And obviously the normal contextual variables of a contest, like the larger the contest that you're playing, the closer to the nut lineup that you'll need to make. So can you play guys like Vettori or Fiziev or Joanne Wood in smaller field contests? Yeah, because you may not need the nut lineup. Large field, those ceilings, I don't know. Less of a chance that these fighters hit a ceiling where they would be optimal. They would be in the nut lineup with their score. Because you also have to think of that on the underdog side as well. Right? You take a look at I think Leon Edwards. I mean, do you think Leon Edwards wins a decision? I mean, he probably needs an early knockout. I mean, look, Leon Edwards knocked out Usman in the 5th round in their last fight and didn't score 100 points. This is a 15-fight card. It's quite possible that Leon Edwards actually does that again. Scores 90 points and doesn't even make the optimal lineup at 70 and 7,300. Right, Brian Barberena against Gunnar Nelson. I mean, if he doesn't get a knockout on the first round, I don't know how he scores 100 points. Right, Luana Carolina or Jennifer Maya. I don't know. Ceilings are limited. Luana Carolina, I mean, what does she do? She doesn't really do much. She doesn't grapple. She's not a high-volume striker. I mean, Joanne Wood, I don't know. It doesn't look like... I'm not sure that she wants to fight anymore. So the variance of that fight may be actually a little bit higher. But looking at those fights, those are not necessarily the highest ceiling fights. Can it happen? Yes, but it's a lower probability. And you should be focused on larger cards for finishing probability, for 100-plus point type of probabilities, rather than just pure win equity. Oh, I think that person could win the fight, right? Lerone Murphy versus Gabriel Santos. It's like, yeah, I think Lerone Murphy at 8,300 has good win equity, but does he score 100 points? Much lower, less likely than like the Ludovic Klein Jai Herbert fight, which is probably going to end inside the distance. It's favored to end inside the distance. We have the Christian Duncan Dusko Todorovic fight. That's like minus 375 to end inside the distance. The fights that end inside the distance are more likely to score 100-plus points. So on larger cards, I will focus on more of those types of fights than the ones where, yeah, the winner gets a split decision and wins with like 75 to 85 points. We focus less on that. Then what's the other contextual variable? The spread of the fights. Because that'll determine the likelihood, the probability. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed. These are all probabilities. More likely, less likely. Not will happen, won't happen. The spread of the fights will determine how more or less likely the nut lineup is closer to using most, if not all, of the salary. So 50K, 49.9, 49.5, 49.8. There are some slates where it's less. It's in all cases, it's more likely that a lineup that uses most of the salary is the nut lineup. But as you go down in salary, you also go down in duplication. You also go down in ownership. Less people are playing lineups that leave 1,200 on the table, that leave 700 on the table. It goes down exponentially. So on cards where the spreads of the fights are smaller, it's more likely that a lineup that leaves money on the table can be the nut lineup. And when the spreads of the fight are wider, it's more likely that the nut lineup uses most of the salary. Why is that the case? Well, I mean, if we take a look at the odds here, it's like, well, in order for you to leave salary on the table and the lineup to be the nut lineup, you need to get 6 winners, and they need to pretty much be the 6 highest scores. So in order to get 6 winners, like in any lineup that you make, you're going to have to play at least one underdog. Okay? You're forced to do that, right? And with the 50K salary. So in order to leave 1,000 on the table, you're going to have to play at minimum 2 underdogs and most probably 3 or even 4 underdogs. They could be slight underdogs, but I mean, for the most part, you're going to be playing 2, 3, 4 underdogs and then leaving 1,000 on the table. Well, how likely are the underdogs to win? Well, when the spreads are close, the underdogs, it's a lot of pick 'em fights. DraftKings has the salaries just in the range of what the money line is, but sometimes, like, the most expensive fighter is only a minus 250 favorite. Sometimes the most expensive fighter is a minus 850 favorite. Sometimes on this slate, we have Jack Shore, minus 490. Juliana Miller, minus 440. Jake Hadley, minus 380. Gunnar Nelson, minus 360. Right? So we got a 8-to-1 fighter. We got 2 4-to-1 fighters. We got 2 3-to-1 fighters. And then we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other fighters down to 8,700 that are more than a 2-to-1 favorite. We've seen cards where the biggest favorite is only minus 250 and still priced at like 9,400, 9,500. On those cards, it's much more likely that, the matchups are closer. On a card like this, then typically they're pay-per-view cards. The spreads of the fights are wider, which means it's less likely that we'll see multiple underdogs winning. And then on top of that, winning and also being top 6 scorers. So it's not just like, we got 4 underdogs win. But Jennifer Maia wins and it scores 62 points. Right? Luana Carolina wins and scores 82 points. It's still possible that they don't even make the nut lineup, even if 4 underdogs win. So in order to leave 1,000 on the table, like you need Dusko Todorovic to put up 110 points. You need Yanal Ashmouz or someone to knock him out in the first round and score 105 points. Right? You need Jai Herbert to win with 120 points. And then these guys outscore a 100-point score from one of the 9K fighters. It's like, they outscore a 9K fighter enough that you could leave 1,000. Instead of playing Jake Hadley, you played Omar Morales instead. Instead of playing Gunnar Nelson, you played Jai Herbert, and you left 1,400 on the table. And Jai Herbert still beat out all the guys above him. That's less likely on cards where the spreads are wider. I mean, look, Lerone Murphy is a minus 180 favorite at 8,300. Almost a 2-to-1 favorite down to the 8,300. The only pick'em fight is really Omar Morales and Chris Duncan. Chris Duncan is a slight favorite. It's slight, ever so slight favorite with some line value at 8,000. So more likely, the nut lineup is going to be a lineup that spends most of the money. That doesn't contain 3, 4 underdogs. Which means if you're building lineups and like, I'm gonna leave 1,500 in salary in all my lineups. Like, I don't know how. I don't know if you're gonna build that many plus EV lineups that do that. There's some people there. Hey, there's some multi-entry players that do this every slate. That go, I'm an average salary 48.5, and they build a bunch of lineups and they just do that every slate blindly, without any context. And their portfolios are heavily negative EV on these types of cards. Then on other cards where it's an 11-fight card and it's more than half the fights are pick'ems, their portfolio is heavily plus EV. And a lot of people's that are like, oh no, I'm just going to spend $50K in salary and be duplicated 37 times in every lineup. Like those are the negative EV portfolios. But people think in terms of you got to do it or you don't got to do it. Like it's all based on the context of the slate. So I will be building lineups. I'm doing 70 large field lineups, 5 small field lineups. The small field lineups are going to be. I mean, I'm not going to get nuts with them. But my large field lineups, like out of the 7 lineups, I mean, I'm going to be spending. I'm going to be spending most of my salary. 49.8, 49.9, 50K, and you could still not be duplicate. I could find unique lineups that are 50K. I can find lineups that are only duped 2 or 3 times at 49.9 or 50K. I can. That's what I do. That's what I try to look for. I look for under 5. I aim not for uniqueness. I aim for, is it under 4 or less? Am I duped 4 or less? I don't want to have lineups that are duped 15 times. There's a lot of combinations up here within these 9K fighters. There's no 9K fighter that's just going to be like overwhelmingly chalky. We have here, I mean, Usman Edwards. I mean, that fight's going to be chalky. Usman's going to be chalky at 8,900, especially with his wrestling, with his grappling and wrestling. 5 rounds of it. Most likely not going to get a finish. He's only plus 330 inside the distance, but he could score 130 points, no problem. Just on grappling, he's going to be popular. Then Christian Duncan has the best inside the distance line, and he's only 8,700. But of course, that fight, that Dusko-Duncan fight, I mean, that probably ends in the first round. Whoever loses that fight doesn't score well, right? Obviously. So I think Christian Duncan is going to be decently popular. I think Ludovic Klein at plus 110 inside the distance, he'll be decently popular. But I mean, nothing stands out that much. I mean, in the 9K range, Makayev is 9,700. He's a minus 850 favorite with a minus 130 inside the distance, and he's a chain wrestler, which means he's great. His floor and ceiling combination is the best on the slate. But at 9,700, especially when there's like a lot of these dogs are, I mean, they're not very good to win. It's hard to build lineups with a $9,700 fighter and still find 6 winners in your lineup. So it's not like he's going to be exorbitantly owned. I have him at 28% owned. Then Shore, Miller, Hadley, Nelson, like all these low 20s. I don't know if any individual one stands out. I don't think people will just be like, oh, I got to play Gunnar Nelson, or I got to play Jake Hadley, or Miller, Shore. I think it'll be spread around 20%. So how many combinations are? I mean, you could do Shore Miller, you could do Shore Hadley, you could do Shore Nelson, you could do Miller Hadley, Miller Nelson, Hadley Nelson. You could Mokayev with any of them. You could use one of them and then also play, then you have like Sam Patterson, probably in the low 20s as well, at 9K. Then you get in like the mid-range, and it's like, I think Casey O'Neill is going to get decent ownership. She'll be around 30% owned. Klein will be close to that. But then like Murphy will be in the low 20s. Chris Duncan will be in the low 20s. Like there's not going to be many fighters that are just like overwhelmingly owned, which means that there's going to be a lot more combinations available that'll be less duplicated. As long as you avoid the primary duplicated type of lineup constructions. On the underdog side, I would say we're going to get obviously some name value ownership on Justin Gaethje at 7,400. We're going to get Leon Edwards, main event underdog, who is the champion, right? Even though he's an underdog. I think Roman Dolidze at 7,100 is going to be way overowned, right? To me, the overowned and underowned as of my figures right now, I think the overowned fighters right now, I think Usman is overowned at 42%. That doesn't mean you can't play him. But on a 15-fight card, I mean, there's 14 fights that could outscore the main event that's 5 rounds. So, like, Like as the card gets bigger, the main event is, the main event still gets, the 5-round fight still gets owned. Typically the 5-round fight on a 15-fight card is always overowned. Just always. So if you build your Usman lineups, build that with in mind. That you have to find leverage elsewhere. So I have Usman is overowned. I got Lerone Murphy at 24% is overowned to a decent amount. I mean, there's some minimal, minimal discrepancies. I think Gagey is a little overowned. I think Leon Edwards is going to be overowned at 28% if he comes in at that. That's where I have him at now. At Roman Dolidze at 28-ish%. I have him as overowned. Right? Those are the main people that I'm probably gonna be under on. Casey O'Neill is a little bit overowned, but not heavily overowned. I think it's Usman. The overowned stuff is kind of like Usman and Murphy, Gagey, Edwards, Dolidze. But out of all these overowned people, I mean, I don't mind playing Usman. I like avoiding the chalky underdogs. The underowned fighters, I think Miller will be a little underowned. Typically a $9,400 female fighter. Doesn't get as much ownership as they should. I have her at 22%. I've Hadley a little underowned. At like 22%. If he comes in at 22%. Just a little underowned. I got Fiziev against Gagey. A little underowned. Christian Duncan's about the same. I mean, only because he's minus 135 inside the distance. I have him at 32. He probably should be around there. I got Ludovic Klein at plus 110. He probably should be 30. I have him at 28. But the underowned play is more in the lower range. Like I have Omar Morales is underowned. Because Chris Duncan, because of the line flippage, I think Chris Duncan may be twice as owned, or almost twice as owned as Omar Morales. So I think Omar Morales is a good leverage play. You just have to understand with Omar Morales that, like, if he doesn't knock him out, like, you're getting no points. Okay, Omar Morales has, like, no volume. He doesn't wrestle, and he has no volume. Okay? So just be aware of that. You're playing a guy that will win with one punch. That's it. If he doesn't get that one punch and knock him out, like, don't expect him to even win a decision. But for his line, for his plus 190 inside the distance line, at 18% owned, I have him as underowned. I have Dusko Todorovic as underowned against Christian Duncan. Todorovic, also understand that Todorovic can wrestle. He has no chin. Dude, this guy just leaves his hands down and he barely gets his head off the center line. He's waiting to be knocked out. I mean, to me, the fight to target for 100+ points is the Christian Duncan Dusko Todorovic fight. But I think Todorovic has, like, Christian Duncan has, like, the first round knockout upside. But Todorovic could wrestle. Christian Duncan has horrible takedown defense. And he's a newcomer. I mean, like, it's like, okay. And these UFC debutantes that are favored are a lot of times, people overvalue them. Or they look at the guy that they're facing and go, that guy sucks. It's like, well, Dusko Todorovic has faced actual UFC caliber fighters, while Christian Duncan hasn't. So Todorovic can take him down. Ground and pound, something like that. So Todorovic has 100+ point upside. But he also could get knocked out in 17 seconds. But I have him as underowned. I also have Yanal Ashmouz. He's a UFC newcomer. He's facing Sam Patterson. They're both making their debut. I have him as underowned. I have him at 16%. And he has wrestling upside also. He's gonna almost have to have. Yanal Ashmouz is gonna have to wrestle with the discrepancy of height and reach. Like Sam Patterson is gonna be like a half a foot taller than him, and like have nearly a foot reach advantage. I think 10 inches. I think Sam Patterson is 6'3", and Ashmouz is 5'9", And this is at 155. So, like, Sam Patterson is just, his frame is ridiculous for 155 and a 10-inch reach. So, like, dude, Ashmus is not going to do anything, like, from distance at range. He's going to have to get on the inside, and then he tries to get on the inside, and maybe he gets knocked out. I think that's a good fight to target as well. The Patterson-Ashmus fight. I mean, you can see this just from the inside the distance lines. I mean, like, I'm not saying anything. Like, I'm not coming up with hot takes out of nowhere. So those, I mean, I think the Klein-Herbert fight overall is a little underowned. So, like, I'll be focused on Patterson, Ashmus, Todorovic, Christian Duncan, Todorovic, Klein-Herbert. Just understand with the Klein-Herbert stuff, like, you got one round for both fighters. Like, these aren't really wrestlers. I guess Klein can take Herbert down. Like, Ludovic Klein really isn't a wrestler. So, like, Ludovic Klein and Jai Herbert, it's like outside of the first round, probably neither fighter hits 100. Patterson, Ashmus, I mean, I think Patterson probably you need first round, and Ashmus maybe not because he's 7,200. I think the Fiziev-Gaethje fight is going to be overowned, but I wouldn't mind playing Fiziev for leverage because I think Gaethje is going to be overowned just based on name value. The thing about the Roman Dolidze ownership is like, oh, Roman Dolidze maybe 30% owned at 7,100. But I don't even know. I don't even think like, oh, well, the leverage thing is to play Vettori at 9,100 against him. I mean, I just rather play another 9K fighter. I just think but the other fighters have so much more upside than Vettori. And Roman Dolidze, I don't rate out to be that great of a fighter. I think some of the recent finishes, he's just been lucky to get in certain positions. And this is a step up in competition. Roman Dolidze, I mean, he faced Jack Hermansson last fight. Hermansson won the first round easily. And then Hermansson got Dolidze down, and Dolidze reversed, and then got the weird calf slicer, whatever tie. He got some weird position, and then hammered him to death. I don't think that happens against Vettori. I mean, Hermansson is a decent fighter, but I mean, if it wasn't for an opportunist position that Dolidze was in, I mean, he would have lost that fight. So, like, Vettori's even better than Hermansson. But he's plus 335 inside the distance because we've seen Dolidze just out of the blue. You know, he get a knockout. He could it seems like something weird happens in half of his fights. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. I may be under on Casey O'Neill because her finishing upside is lower. But I mean, she could rack up takedowns. But I think Jennifer Maia is a good fighter. I mean, Casey O'Neill's young. Jennifer Maia has fought for the title. She's won a round against Valentina Shevchenko. I don't necessarily think that, Jennifer Maia is actually pretty good on the ground. She's not like she's not an offensive grappler, but I mean, Jennifer Maia could reverse Casey O'Neill and submit her. I don't think, Casey O'Neill's only a minus 165 favorite, and people may be treating her because of her upside as so much more of a sure thing than anything else. It's like, yeah, when she scores 130, 150 points, it's when she's a minus 300 favorite, minus 400 favorite. I mean, she's only 62% implied probability, minus 165. She could lose the fight. Do you play her in cash games? Yeah, okay, I could see that. Yeah, okay. I'd much rather play Casey O'Neill than Ludovic Klein in cash games. Right? Because Klein's path, I mean, a decision win for Klein could be 55 points. I mean, that's how low it could be. Casey O'Neill could lose and score 55 points. Yeah, but I think the popular build, like if we're gonna go by like GPP, I think you're gonna see like Usman. You can see Usman. So this would be like lineup types that you would avoid, like Usman Dolidze, right in here. Probably see Casey O'Neill, right, something like that. Casey O'Neill. Probably see one of these 9K fighters. One of them. I don't know which one yet. Hadley. maybe. Hadley, and then 8,100. We got 8,100. We get the Justin Gagey here or something, right? Justin Gagey, 8,800. Christian Duncan. Yeah, like something like this, right? A 9K, right? So a 9K fighter. Usman at 8,900. Dolidze and Gagey. And if you don't have Usman and you have Edwards, then you take out Gagey and you put in Edwards there, right? Christian Duncan at 8,700. And if not Christian Duncan, this could be like Ludovic Klein, right? Ludovic Klein, and you move up Hadley to like Makayev. Like I could see this. I could see this being a popular lineup. Makayev, Usman, O'Neal, Klein, Gagey, Dolidze. I see this being a popular construction. A popular lineup in and of itself. And if you don't play Gagey here, and you don't play Usman, right, then you have Edwards in that spot, right? So these would be what the Edwards kind of lineups look like. Edwards, Dolidze, O'Neal, Makayev, Klein, Sam Patterson or something. Gunnar Nelson, or instead of Makayev, you have two. You could play two of these people, right? You could play Shore and Nelson, right? Something like this. You may see a bunch of lineups that look like this, with two 9K fighters with no Usman, and then Edwards in that lineup. These are the lineups that in GPPs that I would be avoiding. But these are the lineups that you cross out. Highly duplicated lineups. But you could build plenty of lineups. I mean, I think combination-wise, I'd group out. I mean, like the groups aren't that dramatic because like there's nothing that's like insanely owned. I think maybe I group out no more than two of Gagey, Edwards, Dolidze. But I mean, I still think you can make decent lineups that have weird combinations up top. I think the highest R combination is going to be Usman Dolidze. Usman Dolidze or like Makayev Edwards. Right? In order to play $9,700 Makayev, you're going to jam in like the main event underdog. So maybe you avoid some of those combinations. Makayev Edwards and Usman Dolidze. Or even Usman Gagey. Or you do something like Usman Gagey, Edwards, Dolidze, and just say max 2. Even then, I would me personally, I'd do max 1. I don't even want that. I want to make sure I'll be even less duplicated. But you can probably find combinations. Not as many that are going to be under 5, even with 2 of those guys. On the lower end, I mean, truthfully, I don't know how much Barberena, Gordon, Hardy, Amirkhani, or Filio I'll have. I mean, they have to win, and they also have to score well. I mean, their inside the distance lines are just awful. Like Magwar and Amirkhani could win with a submission in the first round against like Jack Shore, I guess, in theory. Outside of the first round, I think Magwar is just what he doesn't strike much, and I mean Jack Shore is a better wrestler than Amirkhani. So like, what's going to happen when he gets gassed? Which Magwar gets gassed all the time. So it's like he's like first round submission or bust guy. Filio's plus 900. I mean, come on. Because it's not just winning. Like it's a 15-fight card. Maybe Javel Filio wins a decision and scores 68 points. Like, I don't know if that does it. I don't know. Great. Helps me cash more. I don't know if it hits the nut lineup. Malcolm Gordon, plus 740. Veronica Hardy, plus 750. I mean, these are very low probability outcomes. Barberena, maybe. Barberena could come out and brawl against Gunnar Nelson. I don't think Gunnar Nelson is that good. I mean, Gunnar Nelson will spam takedowns. Like, and Barberena has no problem getting taken down. Like, that's why the line is the way it is. But if Barberena doesn't get taken down, I mean, Barberena on his feet, why not? Maybe I take a shot on Brian Barberena, but it's quite possible I may not have any Gordon, Hardy, Amirkhani, or Filio. It feels like Gordon should be better than plus 740. It feels like it should be, but I mean, I think Hadley knocks him out. I mean, I think Hadley has him covered everywhere. But Malcolm Gordon, he could pull out something. So I'm just not going to be building that many lineups with like these low price fighters. I think I'm going to have plenty of Todorovic, Ash, and Ashmaz, whatever. Those are going to be the two underdogs I have more of. And then in smaller field stuff, Luana Carolina against Joanne Wood. I don't think Carolina puts up 100 points. So I think for large field contest, she may not be as valuable. But in small field stuff, I think I think Luana Carolina could finish Joanne Wood. If Joanne Wood, I mean, this could be her last fight. I mean, without her saying that this is her retirement fight, this could be her retirement fight. And we all know, we've all seen what happens in people's retirement fights. Anytime, this is the heuristic, right? Anytime someone says, this is my retirement fight, you take the other person. You take the other person because it typically ends bad for the guy or the person, the fighter that's retiring. Joanne Wood has not looked good. Luana Carolina isn't good either, but I mean, I think this fight is so much more high variance. I'll take the shot on the $7,600 fighter. Right? And I think I'll play a bunch of Omar Morales. Although, you're going to get that situation. Remember with William Knight a couple of weeks ago? Omar Morales he's just going to wait. You're going to be sitting there. You're going to be screaming at the TV for a minute and a half going, are you going to do anything? He's a counterpuncher. So, like, he's going to wait for one good punch, and that's it. He's going to have 36 significant strikes in a decision. And he'll probably lose because of volume. So just understand that if you're going to play that fight. Anything else? Any questions in the YouTube chat? I mean, this is all I do. Break down the, ownership versus the betting lines versus, the projections and ceilings. Who's underowned, who's overowned. What is the nut lineup more or less likely to look like? Based on the contextual variables of the slate. And then you get the lineup constructions that you should avoid. And the lineup constructions that you should look to go towards. So on this slate, 15-fight card with a lot of large spread fights. For large field GPP, you're probably building lineups that are closer to 50K. You're probably prioritizing inside the finishing equity over win equity. And you're trying to avoid the popular combinations of like Mokaev, Usman, Dolidze, Leon Edwards, Casey O'Neill, Justin Gaethje. Like if you have like 3 or 4 of the guys that I just mentioned in your lineup, or even 3, if you have 3, if you have 2, if you have 3 of those, probably not. Christian Duncan's probably, you could throw that in there as well. Probably want to max 3 at minimum to avoid combinations like that. I mean, those aren't bad lines, it's just that they're going to be duped more often than they should. Okay. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. The thummy thumbs. Hit the thummy thumbs. Smash them. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Send in your questions about DFS strategy, especially the MLB ones. We'll be starting our MLB primer this coming Monday. So it'll be Monday through opening day. We'll just be going through, one MLB DFS 101. Maybe not 201, not 101. How many points do you get for a single? We're not going to go over that stuff, right? So maybe MLB DFS 201 type of class. So send in your questions. Questions at theoryofdfs.com, especially if you have those MLB DFS related questions. and I will be answering them. And obviously, I'll be answering any other DFS strategy questions or MLB questions even once the season starts, right? We'll have 6 months of MLB, right? Within 6 weeks of the MLB season started, we'll be like, oh, when is this over, right? That's what it always is. It's exciting in the beginning. Then by the time you get to July, it's like, when is this ever going to end? Okay, that's normal. That's normal for MLB. So I'll be covering that starting next week. James will be on Mondays. We'll start that with James, with Mondays with McCool, and go throughout the week until leading up to opening day. And of course, then we can start getting preemptions of the pregame show where I'm on Grinders Live with Dean, because we'll have some Wednesdays and Thursdays that have like afternoon slates, like noon, 1 p.m. type slates. And we'll talk, and we'll actually break down some actual MLB slates early in the morning. That's what I do here. I help you guys, right? You help me by hitting that thumbs up button. So hit the thumbs on your way out the door. Have a good UFC 286. Is it 286? I think it's 286. I think it's 286. Well, have a good card. I'll be back next week answering your DFS strategy questions like I always do here, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.